today on the Mick Tully Show, it's actually a real, first of all, it's an honour. Secondly, if you're a regular viewer to this, you know my tomfoolery and where I mess about a lot. This is one of these times where I'm actually going to be very well behaved, because the gentleman who's sitting with me today is literally, if you've ever seen anything or listened to anything I've ever done, Rick will be referenced so many times. It's the one and only legendary Sifu Rick Fay. Thank you, Rick.
Good to be here.
No, the pleasure's all mine. Right, as you guys know, Rick is one of the most formative men in my life, as a teacher, as a friend, as a guide, as a mentor. And we're down here in Calshot, and if you're not here, why aren't you here? Huh?
What's up with that?
Welcome. It's open for everybody, right?
They should be here.
They should be here, and this is an annual event now,
Happening again next year.
Perfect. So Rick, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the very beginning, because that's a good place to start. How did you get into martial arts?
That far back.
Yeah.
As long as we don't have to do the years. No, it was just something that we were doing in school, early in school. And I grew up in a sports family, so my dad was a football coach and that kind of thing. We were active that way. And then people were also doing martial arts. So we started, I started with a Hapkido guy. Then we had Southern Praying Mantis. We had some other things. Then finally, one of my training partners, Scott Pomeroy, went out to the Aspen Academy and saw this man named Dan Inosanto. And he came back and said, you got to check this out. So we went down to Chicago to the first weekend seminar that Guro did. And then, obviously, I was sold from the beginning.
And who was hosting that?
Fred Degerberg.
Yeah, man, that guy is,
He's a legend.
He was a pioneer, right?
Yeah, he was way ahead of his time. And he was great to us. And so from then on, we followed Sifu Inosanto wherever he went. At that time, I had a lifestyle where I could be gone. We'd see him 4 weekends a row. It was great. It was great.
Yeah. So. Well, famously, I remember the story you told me once you went to an Inosanto seminar, went to see Guro Dan, and it was during your honeymoon.
I did. It wasn't a seminar. On my first honeymoon, I dropped my new bride off in San Francisco and went to the academy in LA and trained for 5 days.
Wow.
So, sounds logical.
Yeah. It sounds perfect to me. It sounds perfect to
Yeah.
me. So how old were you when you first met Guro Dan?
Oh boy, I was a kid, Mick. I would have been 21, 22, somewhere in there.
Well, that's crazy, because I've said this so many times in every article, every interview, every article I've ever written. Whenever I talk about martial arts, I used to read about you, and I read about you, Terry Barnett, Rick Young, Bob Breen.
Those are great people, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I'd never thought I'd get to meet these guys, let alone even train with you, let alone, one day represent you, which I still can't believe he lets me do that, We're restructuring that now, so I could be out here soon, I could be teaching Taibo for Billy Blank soon, you know what I mean, right? But,
under review, how's that?
Under review, I like it. But when you first saw him, was it just a case of, this guy doesn't seem human? Because that's the way when I first saw Guro Dan, because I was never a Bruce Lee fan.
I would say that's true. He's one of the very few people in the world that can make me starstruck, and that was true back then. I was starstruck. And also, I was just, when I looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is something I've never seen before. This was much different from the other martial art that I had seen. There was nothing like it, at that time. And for those people who don't know, Dan Inosanto has slowed a lot in his later years, and some of his ability has gone away. When he was in his prime, he could really roll.
Yeah.
And, I know I've told you this, but I remember the day I decided to do this for a living, because he did this horrendous demonstration, and people are literally flying out of the ring.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Imada and that group, right? They're literally just flying around the ring. And then he stopped and he did this long lecture about the reasons you do this martial art, and it's about love for yourself, love for your family, love for your community, and all of that stuff. And I thought, I'm going to do this. This is fantastic. There's more power in that paradox of a violent capability but a loving individual than I'd ever thought possible. I mean,
yes.
I looked at that and I thought, okay, that has something to offer. That's affecting the world in a positive way.
Well, you see, this is the thing. I always say this. It's like, for as good as the martial arts is, which I always find really ironic, because we get as a byproduct stuff that people torture themselves for. So you get these guys that torture themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, And the irony is they're not very good. And then we meet like giants of men who, and this is, they want you to get better. Guro Dan was like, well, you were the first person that I ever met in my life that I actually thought, this is one guy who actually wants people to be better than him.
Yeah.
Was, and you were the first person that I'd met people who said it, but you're the first person. And then of course, when, Guro Dan does it, and it's like, it's unbelievable because lightning doesn't strike that many times in the same place. So how can you have all of these guys that are so good and so different? It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, we're blessed. I'll tell you, it's a great time. Steve Inosanto is a guy that we won't see for generations to come. That's a guy that we just happen to be here at the right time.
Yeah.
And you won't see that again. People will pretend now. That's when he retires or passes away. People will pretend to be him or to model after him or whatever. But he's told us over and over again, you have to be you. So you have to be Mick Tully. You can't be anybody else. Sorry about that.
I love being me. Jesus, look what I've got to work with here, and I love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we all have to continue on our own path. But he was capable of setting the path for so many different people and has so much to offer. And, we're just lucky. It's just that simple. I always tell people, here's a guy with more experience, more to offer than anyone for generations before us. And he shows up in your town and gives it to you.
Yeah.
The fact that he's actually in my school, in my house, is just, it's a real treasure. And, over time, as I've gotten to know him, I can't say enough good. If people out there haven't had a chance to see Dan Inosanto in a seminar environment, make that happen.
Yeah.
Because, he is older. He's almost 80. And he's still phenomenal. He still looks great. And I hope he continues till he's 120.
Well, yeah. Well, you see, this is the one thing with Guro Dan Inosanto especially. The way that the training is created and the way that the environment, one of those lines that he says, a good teacher creates an environment where knowledge reveals itself.
Right.
And, when you hear that, you can say it to some people and it sounds like word soup. But then when you think about it, you just go, wow.
That's true. You have to set it.
Yeah.
There's one of the hardest things about teaching is you have to set it so that the student thinks they thought it up. And they believe they discovered it, but you just got you lead them. Yeah, you will think you're one genius.
Yeah.
He's told me that many times. But you think, okay, cool, I discovered that. But what you did was you led them right there. It's like learning a town. So you led them right there. So you lead them to this street, and the buildings that are on that street. But then you say, go explore, go discover. And I think Kali, especially for me, Kali allowed you to be creative earlier than other arts. Yeah. Other martial art lets you be creative. You can be creative with other arts, whether it's Taekwondo, whether it's Shotokan, Wing Chun, whatever. You can be creative, just not for a long time. They're busy molding you first.
Yeah.
Whereas Kali, there's a little molding, obviously, to be done, but then they let you be creative. And then really my job as an instructor then is to kind of put a check on them. Because creativity sort of gets out ahead of itself, right?
Yeah.
People are doing stuff and you go, wait a minute, guys, there's actually a way to do this. You're reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing. What I like about, what I really, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I pretend to be, and I'm a really good BS merchant, so people believe this, right? But it's the elevated thinking. And then, I think we've talked about this many times where you've got, say, Tony Robbins, that's $1 billion industry that he's got this self-help or self-development program. Right. Then you've got, whatever the biggest Krav Maga club in the world is, organization, they're making a ton of money. And then you've got guys who just want to work out and get fit. And we offer all of that in one package in the same place. And it was like, that I could never work that out, especially in the JKD world, how there wasn't more gazillionaires. Because when people discover it, how many times do people turn around to you and say, you've changed my life?
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, this art, there's a lot here. People tell me all the time they got off antidepressants, they beat a drug habit, they quit smoking. They usually swear at me. But it really does, it helps to change lives for the positive. And there's the occasional self-defense story, but that's such a minor part of what we do. It's such a minor part. And the JKD sort of street fight era was long ago.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate anyways. It really wasn't, we didn't need to be there. And it's just so much more than that. And so we try to, at least for MKG, we try to have a package, a whole self-development or whatever package, so we can cater to different types of students.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to say, I really like the way that Rick says it. I think it's just the accent, but we create better, more functional human beings for a better, more functional world.
Yeah,
that's a great method statement to have. So
Yeah.
tell me, what got you to the point where you realised? Because I know, I'm asking you a question, I already know the answer.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned Tony Robbins before, and
Yeah.
if you don't mind sharing the story about when you had to write down what the unique selling point was, or there was something different about
Right.
your organisation, would you share that?
Yeah, well, we had a chance to spend a weekend at a small Tony Robbins event. They were smaller then.
Yeah.
He has huge events now, and he asked us to write the grandest statement about what we do. And it just poured out of me. I said, this can change the world. Absolutely, this can change the world for the better.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Dan Inosanto do it, by the way.
Yeah.
So this guy does it, and through cultural awareness and different ways to open minds and that sort of thing, he really has set a model for us to change people for the better. And yes, we do create martial artists. There is a fight underneath it. So we have capable people. But with that capability comes everything from confidence to a certain kind of interpersonal caring to understanding, looking at bigger picture. There's a lot of big thought, I guess is what you would call it. But they start to think about bigger things rather than just, day-to-day concerns and all that stuff. You free yourself up for so much more. And now, a lot of it's health. As we're aging, we're aging. You look at the age of my group and everybody's getting older. And this thing that we've been given is the fountain of youth. I mean, it really is. It's for people, I know I wouldn't move at all probably at this stage if it wasn't for this.
Well, I don't directly attribute this quote to you, but I got it from you, but it's so relevant to my own father. So I remember you said you look at Dan Inosanto and then you look at your father, who was a very active sports, he was an athlete, right? And a high-end athlete. My father wasn't an athlete, but my father's 71, and he'd always worked in construction and was always fit.
Right.
Can't get out of the chair now. Literally has to be helped.
Yeah.
And, some of that's bad lifestyle choices, but the other one as well is, I remember Guro Dan saying, you just move.
Yeah. And there's so many different types of movement. I was just at a chiropractic seminar, and I was the guinea pig, right?
Right.
So they're doing things to me, and it was okay. But then he showed me his movement guru, and he's showing me the video of this guy, and he's teaching movements to try people to get moving as they age. And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Give it a couple hundred years, it'll grow up to be Kali."
Really?
Because they almost had it. But this thing, these movements, whether they thought it out or whether it's an accident, I don't know. But there's some secrets to this. And the more I study brain, I started with brain injury, because obviously I'm interested in brain injury. We've all taken so many shots to the head, right? So what have we done to ourselves? And from that, then I started looking into like brain development and neuroplasticity and all of that sort of thing.
Right.
And this Kali is the cutting edge of what they're talking about. It really is. They're getting to the point where they will discover what these movements have to offer. And it's right there. We're right on the edge of that, where they're going to start changing people's brains.
Well, you see, this is the thing. So I remember you saying it to me, so I started looking into it. And it was the whole getting both sides of the brain working together. First of all, it was stroke victims that they were trying to get moving, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting this independent movement going. And then they were doing CAT scans. And because we now know that the brain will repair itself.
Right.
And you can, it will regenerate. And I often look at it, I look at Kali, and I just think to myself, maybe there's this huge thing going on that we don't know anything about.
Right.
We've just been going through the motions, enjoying it, and then we realise that this awesome health benefit comes with it. It's crazy.
Well, over the years they've talked about an actual spiritual connection to that, and that part I don't know about, but it might be just that they're feeling so much differently in their brain. My old training partner used to call it sharper. He said, when I train the Kali, I just feel sharper. I feel sharper. And I like that word, right? Because it's not just physical. It's not just that you got a heart rate, your muscles pumped up a little bit, or you were able to defend against a punch. It's not just that. You're actually sharpening your being. How you function is sharper at the end of a training session. And that carries on. That has a carry-on effect.
But this is bizarre, because one of the guys who's with us, one of my students, A2, and he's a really, really nice guy. And he's one of these guys that turns around and said, "This has changed my life." Like, I mean, and that isn't lip service. I know because his wife has told me, and she said, "That's the guy I married." But then I lost the guy for a few years, and I say that he's been listening to too much emo music. So if you are turn that off, right? But he came back from CalShot last year, and he said, "The world just seems slower." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Because I've just had this elevated thinking for 4 days." But we used to say this when we'd be at cable in Wisconsin. You'd walk out, and me and you would stop off at the sawmill. And you used to always, I love the way you used to say, "We're going to sit down and we're just going to figure out what happened in the last 4 days."
Yeah.
But it was the truth, wasn't it? You come out and it was like,
there's something that happens. And it's part of the, you have a group of people with a common desire to learn. My assistant Linda, she said that. She said, "It's just so cool to see people, this many people here who are here to learn. They're here to learn, and we're interested." The thing is interesting, you have to admit. I mean, anybody would be interested in doing this. Very few people aren't at least a little interested in, "Oh, that's kind of cool. It looks like movie stuff or whatever."
It looks like Jason Bourne.
Yeah. So it's a little bit cool. You get to hold weapons and all of that stuff. But inside of it are so many lessons. Over the years, Guro Dan Inosanto has given us, I mean, how about the concept of teaching morality through knife fighting? How does that work? But it does work.
Yeah.
And, that's, he said, we teach morality through the knife. You injure to degree. You only take, you say things like you can take the life, but you can't give it back. Yeah. That's a thought like that. And these are people who were doing that. This is not a, that's why it's so powerful. I go back to that first demonstration I talked about. The paradox between the violent capability that's there and the loving, peaceful human being that he is really powerful. Much more powerful than someone that just sits down and goes, "Oh, we should all get along and be happy." And
exactly.
Put flowers in our hair and whatever. Nothing wrong with that. But there's no guts behind it.
No.
And I think people see in this, and they see it in themselves. Like my old student David Kaiser, he used to say, "Walk the dog."
Right.
Because he's got dark periods, David.
Yeah.
And he has those dark periods. And he would come in, and there were days I didn't speak to him. Here's one of my best people, and I knew, okay, we'll just let him go. And he'd walk the dog for a while. But that got that out. I remember disagreeing with a study. I think it's University of Iowa did a study, psychological study, and they said that punching something or impact like that does not relieve stress. And I thought, that's not right. That doesn't sound right to me. So I looked at it. What they did was they put all these stressors on the students, and then they let them punch a pad 5 times. Well, the problem with the study is that's not enough.
5 times, 5,000 times. Now we're going to talk.
I mean, when you're going to take the dog for a walk, you take him for a long walk, right? But we all have that side, and to deny that side, it's either denied usually by cowardice because people are afraid of it, and I get that. I'm afraid of violence, so that I have a fear of violence.
Right.
And so I get that. So it's easier to be a peacenik because you're afraid of it, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you just strongly really don't believe in it. I agree with that. I don't believe in that either. But the reality is it exists. So we have to face it, do something about it, so that we're comfortable with it. Just the confidence that comes from saying, okay, I'm a little bit capable.
Yeah.
I've increased the percentage of the population that I could deal with if I had to. Doesn't mean you're going to deal with everybody. Nobody can deal with everybody.
But this is the thing, and it's going to lead me on to like literally the last thing. Because I've always liked the way that you've been able to look at something and been able to point out the absurdity of one guy's argument while being able to just explain the situation, which was always in martial arts. Which was, would this work? And I always liked, would it work in reality? And you always said, whose reality? Yeah. And then the other one was, would this work against? And then it was like, would this work against John Jones or Chuck Liddell? Probably not. But if we talk about guys like Greg Nelson, Eric Paulson, what was it like? Working out with guys of that caliber.
Well, I mean, Greg Nelson is another level of human functioning. He's probably the toughest guy I've ever met. And he was my day-to-day training partner. I was lucky to I tried to keep up with him, but I can't say I ever really kept up with him. But he's at what he does, he's the best in the world. And that kind of talent and that kind of dedication, he is all of those things, those qualities that we seek to be. Eric Paulson, again, one of the best MMA trainers in the world. These people are exceptional. But when you talk about that, would it work on? Again, it's a percentage. So anything will work. That whole idea of the reality-based movement, would this work? Usually they're talking about a bar fight. So first of all, why don't you stay out of the bar? Secondly, there's a moral equation here. And I've lived this. I've seen it. So when you take martial art, real high-level martial arts skill into a barroom environment, what does this guy putting his bud bottle down and turning around to face you have in his background to even understand the game he's playing? He doesn't understand what's about to happen to him. He thinks we're going to push each other and then punch each other in the nose. Yeah. And he has no idea. And I think it's immoral. As I look back, I think there's some things that, and we think, oh yeah, that was really something. No, I hear it here too. We have it in the States. They're working on a door, right? And say, yeah, I've been in 300 fights. Really? Because when I go to a fight, there's not one of them that's drunk. So you don't have one guy coming out of the corner stewed and the other guy coming in sober and say, okay, I won the fight. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying it's not dangerous, by the way. I understand that those people do sometimes very heroic work and that it can be dangerous, especially after the fact. People start coming back and you get in that. But you get in a violent world, you're going to deal with violence. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my world isn't that violent.
No. You can avoid it, hopefully. Yeah. Let's hope if you live... try to treat people decently and stay out of... the random act can happen to you.
Yes.
Unless you've got a real enemy, hopefully we stay out of that.
That's it. Now, and finally, what I want you to do is just explain what your plans are for, the MKG organisation. And this is a shameless plug time, but I've got a vested interest in this because this is what I teach.
So what we're going to do is so you bridged onto something. This needs to be a better... organized commercial enterprise, and commercial means that we can offer more people the benefits of what we do, because we all sit and talk about the benefits of what we do, but then we limit the number of people, and so we can all offer, or we can offer more people that if we're more organized. Kyle Shot will happen every year, so hopefully everybody will come down to that once a year. The instructor base will be more well organized and well informed.
Yes, sir.
So rather than teaching some bits and pieces they've learned at different seminars, we're going to try to formalize a bit, at least in the, Collie Group will always be open-ended, so we're always going to change things. Every year this art's going to grow and change and improve. Yeah. We'll improve in delivery, we'll improve the product, but the organization, Brendan Westwood is the senior here.
Yes.
He's our senior
he's
guy.
The man. Yeah.
And so he's going to help organize it. He knows all the characters, and we can, I think, really deliver a better product. That's the deal. That's the deal.
And it is what a wonderful product. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Now this is a bit where I actually get turn into a bit of a saddo, because I just like to say, first of all, it's awesome to have Rick. Secondly, just personally, as I've said before, I have my training is this. It's like a table, so you need to have some sort of support, right? So I have Guro Dan Inosanto, who's like a figurehead, and I get to see him once a year if I'm lucky. I get to see Terry Barnett in the UK a lot, which
great
you put me onto, which was one of probably the best moves ever, which are very selfless act by you, by the way, because you knew I was going to go to America every year. You know I'd turn up to all your seminars, but you were the one who said, you got to train with Terry. Oh, yeah. And you put that together.
We're very lucky here in the UK because you have Rick Young.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people, Rick is probably one of the best examples you could ever follow, And then you've got Terry in London, Phil Norman here on the South Coast. Some of these people have been around and they're willing to just hand it to you, for peanuts. I mean, you'll pay them a little money, but how much is it really?
Well, I've said this before. Rick actually is my Sifu, and I know that's a contentious thing, the Sifu title, right? And
I got to admit to you, huh?
Yeah. So what it is like, Rick said to me once, he said, what you have to remember is everything that I do reflects on you, but more importantly, Mick, everything you do reflects on me, right? So I don't think Rick was thinking that through. But as I've said time and time again, I said it to Terry Barnett, I'm going to say it now to you. After my father, you know, after yourself and Terry Barnett are like the three most influential men in my life. And as I said, I don't have one bad memory with Terry, I don't have one bad memory with you. And you know, Dad, it weren't great, but you know what I mean. Now, my dad was a good guy, but he was a tough guy on me. You know what I mean? And just personally, I'd just like to say thank you for everything. And you know, I laugh and joke and come out with it, and I don't take it anywhere near as seriously. I don't think if I took it seriously, you would like it, would you?
A hallmark of MKG. One of my students asked me many years ago at one of the Michigan camps, and he says, "Now let me get this straight. We screw around more than anybody else, but we get more done." I said, "Mark, it's cause and effect. If you relax and have a laugh, you know, joke around, but you're serious about the material, that's going to be better. If we stand around and we're all real formal, and then you're all caught up in the formality, you're not actually getting anything done then. You're not actually getting the I don't know, the thing's not going to sink in as well." And they've done this with learning studies too. Kids learn better when they're relaxed. They learn better. You know, all this stuff is just true. So.
Yeah, you know, we're onto something. We're onto something awesome. It just changes our life. You know what I mean? So, Rick, yeah, one of the best things I ever did was meet you, man, and I really mean that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you are. Thank you, sir.